you tired of trying to choose between having a great night out or having a great next day? Well, Zbiotics is here to make that decision easy. Zbiotics pre-alcohol probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists as a way to tackle rough mornings after a night of drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted to a toxic byproduct in your gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that is to blame for your rough next day. Zbiotics pre-alcohol probiotic produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut, where you need it the most. Just remember to take Zbiotics before drinking alcohol. Drink responsibly and get a good night's sleep to feel your best in the morning. My friend Joel swears by Zbiotics. With a 100% money-back guarantee, guys, there's no risk. If you are unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Scan the QR code on your screen right now. That's going to get you 15% off your first order when you use promo code Chael at checkout. You can also go to zbiotics.com/Chael or just click the link below. Misconceptions and the evil, awful Dana White. Now, I continue to see headlines and a narrative, including from some of our best known reporters within the sport of MMA. And they are continuing to make very polite and very nice statements about Francis Ngannou. And they are continuing to talk about the evil Dana White in the aftermath of Ngannou Fury, which took place in a different country known as England and had nothing to do with Dana White. Nothing. So it's an interesting theme to me. And it continues to draw me in because I want to hear what this person has to say. And I will always, on a different note, I don't expect you to do this, I will on a different note be judging what they say. And then I will instantly form a fight IQ for them. And the fight business is not what you think it is. There's only a few people alive that know what it is. There is no book you can check out. There's no library you can go to. And when that person comes along, they can't give it away. They just can't. Think if you have, in a silly comparison, but one that you'll understand. Think if you have the winning lottery numbers. Now, if you keep those, you get to go and win the jackpot. And you will share that jackpot per the rules with anyone else who luckily has those same numbers. But if you came out and you told people what those numbers are, that was nice or that was generous, or you just wanted credit, you just wanted to show them ahead of time that you had some ability to know what it is. And then that pot gets divided a million times. It's a very different scenario. And there's reasons why, if you had information, that you would preserve the information. However, when I read about the evil, awful Dana White, even when I read about the antitrust lawsuit going on, the one thing that would clear all of this and make that go away, the one thing is accurate information about the fight business. So now you're really put to the test. Do I want to give the answers that only 5 other people alive know? Or do I want to take the risk of whatever might happen with this elongated process, but continue to preserve the information? It's an interesting scenario. So the evil, awful Dana White, the way the story goes, is the one thing that stopped this amazing sporting spectacle of Francis and Fury from happening. But lo and behold, they dug deep, they found a way, they operated in spite of the man. Now, the biggest problem with that claim is the reality of the timeline. I must give Francis a lot of credit, but one thing, if I'm telling the story, that I must also credit him for is Francis appears to be nice. When Francis chose, after his fight with surreal gone, to come and tell the world at a press conference what his reservations with his current contract were. He didn't have to do that. He didn't do that to negotiate. He wanted to level with the fans. If you don't see me back, if you don't see me defending, if you don't see me in a timely fashion, he wanted to let the other competitors know, look, this is what I'm dealing with. I'm trying to get it worked out. Happy to come back, happy to compete in when you want to do it. I'm here in Jon Jones, whatever the situation. But let me let you know something in the order of events in my next life. Step number one, before training camp, before you're going to see me competing, I got to get something worked out. That was nice of Francis because he did it in a nice way. He's very calm. He didn't raise his tone, which could be intimidating, right? Think of an angry Francis Ngannou. He didn't use profanity. He didn't threaten people. And he very much understood, and proof of that was when Kevin Iole at that press conference asked him, Francis, I have heard that your contract will expire in December. Right? This is February that he gets asked this. The fact of the knee surgery and the injury that he had and all that, that's subsequent because that hasn't been revealed at this point. Timeline matters. Kevin Iole says, I'm hearing that you expire in December. If you can't get things resolved, are you willing to wait that long for it to expire? And Francis said yes, but it also let us know that everybody understood. And again, to my point about Francis offering us information to set our expectations as well as those of the fellow competitors, he did it all. Okay. Now it becomes relevant that we have the knee injury because subsequent and regardless of the contract situation, subsequent to the idea that Jon Jones is returning in this massive fight, we can't get there because now we also have an injury, which helps Francis in this terms of the story, at least in terms of public's opinion, because it wasn't a matter of what the dollars were or who the opponent or what the date or what the venue was. None of those things matter. Can't do it anyway dealing with an injury, and we understand those things, but a massive respect was shown. Yuri Prohaska was hurt for 7 days when he was no longer the champion. Jamal Hill, whether it's their choices or not, Jamal Hill, 17 days. And there was a 10-month period just because of the injury, aside from the contract, where Francis wasn't able to compete. But there was no interim championship and there was not a stripping of the champion, which allowed him to walk out the door the heavyweight champion. Which is a very different story, which is very helpful to Francis. Now, timetable, okay? When the negotiations didn't work, the UFC has what they call an exclusive negotiating period. After that, it will default to a right of refusal, meaning if Francis, once he isn't bound to only in good faith speak with the UFC and negotiate, once he can go out and speak to others and does, should he find a deal that he accepts, that deal then goes to the UFC for the UFC to say, we'll do it. Right to match is what this is called. And it's a big deal, even if the spirit to get something done isn't there. You can just hurt a guy. You can just tie a guy up. We see such incredible importance to timing. Use the one other example we had of Conor McGregor versus Floyd. That fight doesn't work if Floyd isn't 49-0 and going for 50, which was a big goal that he had established to the market years before. And it doesn't work if Conor McGregor is not a simultaneous two-division UFC champion. It's a very different scenario. They don't get them together. If those boys go try to find each other today, it won't work right. The timing matters. Chuck versus Tito part 3 that nobody watched and drove a company out of business. I don't fault those guys for it. I'm sharing you. It worked back here when they were in your youth, when they were in the top of the game, when there's a belt out, right? It was a very different scenario. So to execute, or rather to enforce your right to match clause, even if you're not talking to the guy, you've got no plans to do it, you just want to do it to be annoying and hold the guy up, you have the right. Dana didn't do that. He came out publicly and said, we are granting Francis a full release. No right to match. No exclusive 90-day period. He is free to go and reach a deal with anyone He would like to. And that right there, right? When you understand about the knee injury, so you understand whether there was a back and forth or not, you use leveraging and positioning, which is a very normal thing to do, right? To use the power of a contract is the whole reason that you have a contract. None of those things were done, and none of those things cost Francis a single day of work because couldn't go to work, had the knee injury. So as soon as he's free, as soon as he's better, he's got a full release and he can go. And the understanding of that, all of which is public information, it's just something that you either never had or you didn't store away or you forgot until I reminded you, absolutely clears any of this evil, awful Dana White business. Now, the misconception, okay, and Francis versus Fury. I haven't seen a sporting event like this. I haven't personally participated. I've been participating in media and coming to you guys for the better part of a decade. Nowhere in that time have I been in a spot where we've talked about and celebrated and had an excitement after the event happened. Never like this. People are still talking about the judges. People are saying, I mean, people that you would care about that matter, meaningful names. I just rewatched it again last night. How many times have you guys heard that? I watched this thing 4 times now. Okay, how many times have you guys heard that? I know you've heard it before. How many times have you heard that from more people about a contest or a sport event that already happened? You ever met a guy that goes, Super Bowl from 1990, I just rewatched it again last night. Like, it's a very uncommon thing, but we're hearing it. I mean, this is a very normal way of speak right now within our space. I rewatched it again. I saw it for the 5th time. It's one of those things that will misconception. It will mislead you into how big an event was from a pay-per-view standpoint. It bombed. Now, it did reach expectations. The networks that held it are not leaving disappointed and with their ass kicked. They had projections. They had an idea of where it was going to go. They based marketing dollars around that. There's no harm, no foul. We knew from Jump Street that Saudi Arabia was going to write a great big check. And they knew from Jump Street they were not going to recoup it. They were going to have a loss. But they were playing a different game, which was not the boxing and or the sporting game. It's a commercial, right? I share that with you because when you talk about the evil, awful, and you talk about the misconceptions, you now have a loss. But the stories and the way they're coming out is Francis should be able to re-sign. He should be able to pursue this. He's great. We should fix this. He should be the champion. Like, these things are very nice of you to say, but they also disclose your lack of understanding. So if you were to put yourself in the decision maker's shoes and judge what you would do, apparently you would go sign him for an endless amount of money. And apparently, if you had the right to him, you would allow somebody else to sign him and they have the money and they go and participate. That's what the claim is. But you're making that claim not just unliterally in a fictional world. You're making that claim without understanding how the business works and what it is you need for protection. Look, when that fight was a bomb, I don't give it a hard time. It's a unique thing. Nobody knew until it was done that Conor, who'd never boxed, could compete for a half hour. No one understood that. So, why did it bomb? Why would a lineal heavyweight champion sitting and reigning, the biggest draw in the entire sport of boxing, versus a UFC heavyweight champion who's no longer champion, but he never lost from a competitive nature, never lost his belt? Like, that seems like a good storyline. Why? Why was that not a big? As you look back, and don't lie. Don't act like you couldn't wait for it. You barely slept that night. Don't act like that. Don't act like when you would go to work, you'd be talking to all your buddies and everybody was discussing this. Don't act like there was 3 different parties you were invited to, but you watched it alone. It wasn't like that. That is a misconception. That is you misconstruing and mistelling the story after the fact. Talking about prior to the match. Why was it a miss? Why was it not working? Why the only way could we get that fight together is if we found an entity that was willing to lose. Why? You have the answer? Because there wasn't a significance. That is the key to today's entire lesson. There wasn't a significance. If Francis Ngannou won, we, the audience, were not informed that there would be a rematch. If Francis won, we were not informed that that would draw him into fill in the blank. If Francis won, he doesn't become the champion. The WBO, for whatever reason, decided to not put the belt up. So when you lose a significance, you have a very big problem. And why did they not have the ability to have a significance? Why did they not have the ability? Right, when you've got the evil, awful Dana White and the evil, awful Empire, which I keep hearing, matched with your misconceptions. You got to marry these together. Why was there not an ability? You think the promoter didn't think of it? It appears that the promoter does think that way. That is what Usyk represented. That is what a signed contract prior to the match. That is what this whole thing being turned into a dual commercial. One for the geographical location and one to build the December 23rd fight between Usyk and Fury. So we understand that they understood. Why didn't they do it? Why didn't they do it for Francis? Why didn't they, like every other major fight, every Mike Tyson fight, every Evander Holyfield fight, every Floyd Mayweather fight, why didn't they leak to the audience that there is an automatic rematch clause? Why did they do any of those things? Because they couldn't do them. That's the part that you're not understanding at all. It was a one-off. A promoter will never, and that's a broad stroke. You, if you go back 70 years, could find 3 exceptions to the claim I just made. A promoter will never do something with a guy that they have on what's called a one-off. They have to have protection. A promoter will never sign an athlete to any deal that isn't a minimum of 3. And when number 3 comes and these 2 are done, he might as well just look at it like he has 1. They're going to extend it before they put him into a title fight in case he wins. So they now have a repercussion, good or bad. They now have the ability to have a repercussion, which is the only thing that gives it significance. And it's the part that everybody is missing right now. Eddie Hearn came out and he floated an idea. He did not get the response that he wanted, so he's not pursuing this idea, but he floated an idea the other day that he would like to get Francis and match him up with Joshua, which, by the way, is a fight that works. Call it Rumble in the Jungle Part 2 and take it to Africa. He didn't get the response from you guys. But it's one of these very interesting parts of the business that you fail to understand. Why is somebody not coming to Francis and offering him a crazy amount of money? Because he's under contract with the PFL. He doesn't have an ability to sign a multi-fight deal. So if you think you're a great promoter and a great businessman and you're going to come to the table with $20 million for Francis and you're going to get him in there with Fury, you're going to have to follow the industry standard, put him on a minimum of 3 fights. He, Francis, is not going to agree to that deal unless there's an escalation in the financial participation in each of those 3 fights. Well, what do you do if he loses? And how many opponents do you believe that you have for him right now? If everything goes great, how many opponents do you have? I will concede you. You have Fury, you have Wilder, you have Joshua. So there's 3. Do you have a 4th? Do you have a 5th? How confident are before you sign that contract with an absolute guarantee that has a deadline? Which means if you think you can get those guys, you got to go get those guys, and you got to get them within this time frame. How confident that you could do that to not give a 1-fight deal, because you got this one great fight, that you could do it 3 times. That is the part of the business that you don't understand, you've never understood, and that you never take into calculation and consideration when you attempt to put yourself in their shoes and say, well, they should have done this. I would have done this. You don't get to do this. You got to do this times 3. You got to make them all work. So now that you have 776 of these very problems that I just laid on you, I just laid an algorithm for you who has played this from the beginning of time of I would do this, I would do this. Well, I just gave you 776 because that's how many contracts you have. So when you have the great night, that actually hits it out of the park. This is what your whole dream when you got in this business to start with was about. And somebody else comes to you and tells you the piece of the pie should have been larger in these directions. You know the truth, which is tonight was a good night, but I have 776, of which 772 are complete flops. And tonight's great night that you speak about has got to feed all of them. So you let me handle what I've promised and guaranteed to do. If I ever break what I promised and guaranteed, you come and flame me with the pitchforks and the lanterns. Do it all you want. But that is the only litmus test I should be held to. Doing honest business and doing what I said I would do. If it's anything else, why are you even bringing it up? So you have a free agent in Francis Ngannou. And it looks like it all worked out. It looked like he figured it out. So now you have the dream of also becoming a free agent. You must understand when it all worked out, it was a very unique situation where you had an entity who was openly willing to lose. That's a very hard thing to find. And the reason that a Bob Arum, a Top Rank, and Eddie Hearn, a Matchroom Boxing, the reason that they haven't come to the table with the big contracts is they got to have three. And if you're a free agent, while that might sound like a really cool thing to you, it turns into a very big problematic situation for the promoter. So you have Deontay Wilder in this situation, in the same spot where you could go and make that fight. I love that. I would be really interested in that. But it is going to have the same problem that tanked the pay-per-view of Fury and Ngannou. And no, it's not that it's on at 11 in the morning Pacific time. The problem is you don't have either. You don't have either guy on a multi-fight deal because they're free agents. So now you have a one-off, which is just for fun. It's just a test. It's just to see what happens. There's something to that. That's just not massive business. There has to be a consequence. Positive for the winner, negative for the loser. There has to be a consequence. It's the problem with using the word exhibition. It's the problem with understanding this is going to be a one night and a one time, and whether we sanction or not, we won't put our belt up, and won't put our belt up because neither one of these guys is going to give it back. It doesn't matter who wins. Neither guy is under a contract. We have nowhere we can go from here. If we end up with the greatest fight ever with the most attention and most attraction, we don't have a contract to redo it. We don't have an ability. We can't go on. We've got to come out to the public, come up with an excuse, put it behind us, and try to sell Usyk. Which, if that was the fight they wanted, he wouldn't be in the front row tonight. He'd be in the ring tonight. So you keep him there, you sit him, you attempt to build it to try to get a return on your investment. And this is a massive part of the fight business that not only do you not understand, you've never even taken into consideration.